Keeneland, every moment matters.
Welcome to another edition of the TDN Writers Room podcast. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the Thoroughbred Daily News, and I'm freezing here in the Northeast with 8 inches of snow on the ground and temperatures in the 20. But to Randy Moss, that's a balmy winter day in Minnesota, right, Randy?
You get no sympathy from me whatsoever, Bill. Here I'm in suburban Minneapolis, which is in the news for all the wrong reasons also besides the weather. But anyway, we won't go there. One of the high temperature on one of the days last week, when fortunately I was in Miami for the Pegasus, was 9 below zero. But we got no additional snow. We got plenty out there right now, but it's just cold here.
And Zoe Cadman is down still in Florida working at the Ocala sale this week. So we'll welcome her back next week. So the big story of the week, among the big stories, of course, we had the Pegasus World Cup, and we'll talk about more about that with our Gainesway guest of the week, Saffie Joseph. But we're the Eclipse Awards. And for the most part, Randy, I didn't find there to be many surprises. The one that I disagree with is Forever Young being named the older male horse. I'll talk more about that later and give you some of the reasons why I didn't think that was the right choice. But again, no real issues other than that. But some of the races to me were the vote totals were sort of surprising. I voted for Flavien Prat. I never thought in a million years he would just trounce Irad Ortiz 152 to 52. My horse Bookham Dano, he won by a nose, 115 to 82 over Ben Tornado. That was a little bit surprising to me that margin was so close. The other one, and I didn't know where to go with this. The trainer race was so wide open. I voted for Brad Cox, so I didn't get that one right. But I can't say I disagree with anybody who voted for Bill Mott. The work that he did with Sovereignty this year, I thought was tremendous. But Cox's numbers in terms of graded races won and money won were much greater than Mott's. That's the reason why I went with him. But that was an 85 to 50 a race. So, Randy, how about you? What's your take from the Eclipse Awards, and anything in particular that you disagree with?
Well, not really. I mean, first of all, I'm shocked that you don't have your Bookham Dano T-shirt on, Bill. I mean, of all occasions that you want to wear it.
I'm under strict orders not to wear it, by the way. Okay.
But it's topical. We always want to be topical on this podcast. You can't. And I actually thought, what was the margin again? 113 to 82? 115
to 82 in that race.
I didn't think that's that close. I mean, it's not like it came down to, 5 or 6 votes or something like that. So I thought it was a fairly decisive win for Bookham Dano, and I could totally understand it. I was most interested to see what people would do in the jockey and trainer categories. It's not very often, at least not in my memory, that you had the trainer and the jockey leading money earners for the year neither be given an Eclipse Award, right? Because Irad Ortiz, in a razor thin margin, won the purse earnings title among jockeys over Flavien Prat. According to Equibase, it was by like $36,000. I think I read somewhere $1,600, but Equibase has it at $36,000, which is still a margin of 0.9%. And I always thought that so many people just kind of blindly took who was on top of the money standings and voted for them for champion jockey. But, kudos to the voters this year for digging a little bit deeper. I mean, Flavien Prat had about 400 fewer mounts than Irad Ortiz. He had 10 more graded stakes wins. He had 10 more regular stakes wins. He had a higher win percentage. He had higher average earnings per mount, obviously. So in all the major races, I think Flavien Prat had a pretty significant advantage. But there's one other thing I want to point out about Irad. Back in the day, in my opinion, people paid a lot more attention to the races won championship among jockeys than they do now. Now it all seems to be about the earnings and who finishes the year with the highest money earned. And you don't hear very much at all about the win standings, the races won standings. And this is remarkable. Irad Ortiz has now topped the country in races won for 9 consecutive years. That's unprecedented. 5 had been the previous record, and he just continues to rack up races won titles. So even though he didn't get an Eclipse Award, I think Irad deserves a lot of recognition for once again coming out on top in that category.
Yeah, I mean, this was a category where there was no wrong answer. I mean, they both had tremendous years. And another thing, Randy, that I took into account when I voted, I took into account largely the things that you brought up about how Pratt had fewer mounts. He actually had a higher winning percentage, and his average earnings per race was quite a bit higher. So those were all, but another thing that I took into account, that I don't know if this mattered to a lot of voters, but it did matter to me, was that he set that record at Aqueduct with the 7 winners the day after the Breeders' Cup. And New York racing has been around for hundreds of years, and and has included a who's who of some of the greatest riders in the history of the game, including your partner on television, Jerry Bailey. And he did something that had never been done there before. I mean, some people may argue that the NYRA riding colony isn't what it used to be because so many top riders have left including the Ortiz brothers, have left for Kentucky. But nonetheless, I thought that was something that I would have probably voted for him anyways, but that was one more, to me, reason to go in that direction. Yeah,
I mean, they're both just absolutely sensational riders. And so, it'll be interesting to see what happens the rest now of 2026.
We shall see. All right. So I want to bring up my beef, and I wrote this in the Thoroughbred Daily News. And this is something that I've been talking about before. And my friend my co-host on the Down the Stretch show, Dave Johnson, completely disagrees with this. We've been arguing about this for 10 years, but I could not vote for Forever Young for the older male championship. And he also got 17 Horse of the Year votes, which going against Sovereignty, I didn't get that at all. Because I take a stand. I will not vote for any horse that has not had more than one start in the United States of America. Now, some people say, wait a minute, he won the Saudi Cup. He did this. He won that big race in Japan beforehand. To me, that doesn't matter. All that matters is it shouldn't matter. All that matters to me is what you did in North America, which boils down to one race. And I don't think that a winner of just one race is deserving of a championship. And I think the Eclipse Awards has lost its way over the years, that it was always supposed to be about the horse who had the best overall year. I mean, nobody races from January to December. I understand that. But, that sort of idea from the start of 2025 to the end of 2025, who did the most? Now, having said that, this was a very difficult category because it was extremely weak. Sierra Leone came in second, and he won one race all year long. Nisos came in third. I think he actually had better credentials than Sierra Leone. At least he won a Breeders' Cup race. But what I advocated, and I doubt anybody's going to listen to me because they usually don't, but there needs to be a rule that if you don't race at least 2 times in North America, you're not eligible. And he's the 24th horse to win the award, an Eclipse Award, without having more than one start in the U.S. And what I bring up, our friends in Canada have a completely different take on this. For the Sovereign Awards, you have to run 3 times in Canada to be eligible for that award. So they're even stricter than this so-called Bill Finley rule that is my personal rule. But, that's my take on it. And it's not meant to denigrate Forever Young. I understand what a good horse he is. And I also understand why voters probably struggled with this category because, again, I said it really didn't have a strong candidate. I voted for Mindframe. He didn't even make the top 3 in the voting. I voted for him because he had 2 Grade 1 stakes. Randy, am I onto something? Or do you think I'm crazy?
Well, you didn't vote for Notable Speech either, right?
No, he ran 2 times in North America.
Oh, that's right. That you ran in
the
Canada.
Woodbine Mile.
Right,
yes.
right.
I did vote for him. He did not defy the Bill Finley rule.
There you go. Okay. As you pointed out, I mean, it's been going on a long time. I mean, you can go back to the to the 1980s, and you can find horses that, including I think maybe 3 years in a row for champion male turf horse, where voters went for horses like High Chaparral twice in a row, Goldikova twice in a row, who just had one start in North America. So this has been going on. It's been going on forever. I would have nothing against the Bill Finley rule. But to me, I'm not going to just come out and say, oh, it's ridiculous that I found this interesting. The Japanese Horse of the Year award was given at roughly the same time as the American Horse of the Year award. And you know who won it? Forever Young. You know how many times he ran in Japan?
One time.
Once.
Right.
Once. So it's
well,
not just
I'm at it. They need to change the rules in Japan too. Okay. But that's my thing. And look, again, I get it. The game has changed. But I don't think that, obviously his Saudi Cup win had a lot to do with this. On top of his Breeders' Cup win, I just don't think that what horses accomplish in Saudi Arabia, Dubai, or wherever, or in Europe, I think it again defies the spirit of what the Eclipse Awards are all about. And again, I'm not calling anybody who voted for him. I'm not going to cast judgment on them. I'm not going to say they made a bad vote, because there are no rules, and there are no rules that. So if there are no rules, do whatever you want, vote for whoever you want. I totally get it. I just think that maybe, whoever does make up these rules, and couldn't even begin to tell you, who is behind the mysterious Eclipse Award committee or whatnot. But maybe they should give this some thought, because I think that we are getting away from what the intent of the Eclipse Awards was really supposed to be, at least back in the 1940s when I first came around horse racing.
And by the way, Forever Young now becomes part of a trivia question, right? Name the 3 horses who were named Eclipse Award winners for dirt racing, having run just one time in the country during that calendar year. And that would be Forever Young, obviously. The other 2 were Arazi in 1991, when he, his tour de force in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, a 5-length win. And then Johannesburg,
right,
who also won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I think that one was at Arlington Park, if I recall correctly. But yeah, those are the 3 on dirt. All the other ones, the other 20-something that you mentioned, were all in grass categories, and from Europe, or in the case of Love's Only You, another horse from Japan.
From Japan, correct. All right, well, let's not I'm not going to try to get too carried away with this. I would just like to have my say about that. We've got plenty more to go here on the TDN Writers Room podcast. After this, we'll go to our Gainesway Guest of the Week, which is our friend Saffie Joseph Jr., who had such a good afternoon at the Pegasus World Cup. And then we'll be right back. Stay with us. The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. Keeneland will offer a record $9.55 million in stakes purses at the upcoming spring meet, which runs from April 3 to the 24th. Opening day features the Grade 1 $750,000 Ashland Stakes, offering 200 points on the road to the Kentucky Oaks, with the highlight of the meeting, as always, being the $1.25 million Toyota Bluegrass Stakes on Saturday, April 4th. After the end of races on closing day, Keeneland will hold the April Selected Horses of Racing Age sale. We'll be right back after this message from Keeneland.
We do this so your granddaughter can work on a farm someday. So the stands will still be packed in 50 years. That's why we come to work every day, obsess over every single detail. Because the story of racing is written one moment at a time, and the future of our industry deserves nothing less. Keeneland, every moment matters.
The fastest horse of the week brought to you, as always, by the fast sires at WinStar Farm. And this week, the spotlight is on the chart-topping stallion. Get that? Timberlake, as in Justin Timberlake. As a 2-year-old, Timberlake was a close second and the hopeful. Then he won the sire-making Champagne Stakes over champion 2-year-old Colt Fierceness. Timberlake is one of only 3 Grade 1 winning 2-year-olds by Super Sire Into Mischief at stud right now. The other 2 being Practical Joke and Citizen Bull. And on Ragozin numbers, his best effort as a 2-year-old, an 8+ figure, was better than either Practical Joke or Citizen Bull ran at age 2. And best of all, Timberlake stands at WinStar for a fee of $15,000. The fastest horse on the week ran on the Pegasus World Cup undercard. Godolphin's Knightbridge was again tremendously impressive, this time winning the Fred Hooper Stakes by 4 3/4 lengths over a field that also included the highly regarded Life and Times. Those two 5-year-olds dueled early in hot fractions before Knightsbridge kicked away and Life and Times faded to finish third. In its most recent start before this, Knightsbridge won the Mr. Prospector Stakes with a 104 buyer. Saturday, his winning buyer was 105. Bill Mott said, "We've been waiting a long time for this horse to show what he can do." Knightsbridge, a son of Nyquist, has now won 5 times in 7 starts.
Welcome in now the Gainesway Guest of the Week, and no surprise considering what happened last weekend in the Pegasus World Cup Invitational. Saffie Joseph finished 1-2 in that race, and we welcome in today as our Gainesway Guest of the Week again. Saffie, congratulations on a tremendous afternoon, a tremendous performance from you two horses. We'll certainly want to talk about Skippylongstocking, but I want to start with White Abarrio because your reaction after the race was so let me search for the right word. I think emotional about how well he ran and how proud you were of him. And he did run a great race. Tell us more about why you felt that way.
Just because everything he's been through, there was a lot of pressure. I mean, as you know, his high-profile scratch at the Breeders' Cup Mile as he got on the track. So when something like that happens, a horse scratched, there is a reason that the vets had this that they decided they were going to scratch him, whether the reason's legit or not. So after that, you have to go through all these protocols where you have to make sure that you go over this horse top head to toe. You have many different people look at him. On almost every person you look at a horse is going to have a different opinion. So just to go through all that, and then the horse was good until Thanksgiving, and then Thanksgiving we're searching to try to get. You're searching for something that's not basically there, and that's the worst thing you can do as far as training a horse. We went ahead and we pulled his shoes and went to a different type of shoe. We went back to nail-on shoes, and that was the biggest mistake we went, because we went from being good to it was a couple of weeks where we were way behind schedule. And Ian McKinley came in from New York, and he looked at him and he said he would get him how we want him, and he did a marvelous job. So I think all the credit goes to him basically in that aspect.
Yeah. Again, we'll talk about Skippy in a second, but I want to follow up on White Abarrio. I mean, my gosh, this horse has persevered through so much in his career. I remember back when he was a 3-year-old and he kept getting sick before all of the big prep races at Gulfstream Park, and it compromised his training, and yet he would win anyway. He would overcome it anyway. And I remember when Rick Dutrow had him during that period of time, and being at the Breeders' Cup Classic with him. And Rick was beside himself throughout the lead up for that race, telling us that, yes, you have to pay special attention to White Abarrio's feet. You really got to stay on top of it. And he said, we are all over it, but these veterinarians are absolutely turning him inside out. And he was worried that they were going to scratch him before the Breeders' Cup Classic. And then we get the dirt mile. And so, yeah, and we were hearing before the Pegasus that there was a chance that the veterinarians might pull the same thing that happened in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. How much pressure was that on you?
Yeah, so you brought up a very good point. And if you go back on the history of the horse, that on making an assessment of a horse, you have to know the horse and you have to know his history. And the history is very important of knowing their gait. And after the Breeders' Cup, I was able to look at all the veterinary checks he's had in every race. And it's basically the similar comment all the time. So it's like, if they were following the history of horse and using the data that's very important, it would have never got to this point. But you bring up the Breeders' Cup. I remember talking to Mark and Clint Cornett during that week, and they didn't know they made him do a PET scan, which we did in the Breeders' Cup Mile again. And the PET scan in 25 was actually better than the PET scan in 23. So when you have a baseline PET scan and it's better 2 years after, it didn't need to. The horse did not need to be scratched on the track. If he was going to be scratched, he could have been scratched Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday morning. And if you had to let him on this track where you felt that you had to scratch him as he got on the track, then he shouldn't have been on the track. And that was the reason that the whole week when we met with the authorities, I told him, if you all have anything wrong with this horse, I'll scratch him right now on the Monday before we did the pet scan. I said, I'll scratch him right now and I'll put him back on a plane. He does not need to run. I just don't want to be led along to the last minute and then you scratch him. And I never envisioned the last minute would be on the track. So look, it's done. It's gone. It created, as I said, a lot of pressure. You have to obviously come back, and every work after that, you work the horse. I mean, everything is checking up, but there is pressure that you don't want something to happen to the horse, and then someone say, "Oh, I told you. Oh, we told you that." I mean, and that could happen to any horse on any given day. Vice versa, you don't want the horse to go out there and run performance-wise and run 10th for 11th because it's going to be the same kind of naysay talk after. It's always easy to talk after, and before it's a lot harder. And thank God the horse went out there and showed up and ran big, and I think he earned a lot of respect in everyone's eyes, and in my eyes, most definitely, because I did not know how he would run. Yeah. But it just shows when they're so classy that they can overcome anything.
And I don't want to diminish, minimize Skippylongstocking's performance in any way, but given the fact that White Abarrio hadn't started since that Jockey Club Gold Cup, and now he was running a mile and an eighth, as good a trainer as you are, I mean, I thought the last eighth of a mile, he might have just run out of gas just a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Like at the half mile pole, he was going well, and I said he's going well, but he's going to get ready to stop. And at that quarter pole, I realized he was going to win the race, and I was like, it still doesn't make sense. He can't win this race. He's not supposed to win like in that aspect. And then I looked to see who could beat him, and then that's where I saw Skippy, and I realized Skippy had a chance to beat him. And look, like they're both my horses. Skippy deserved his day, obviously, but I've never really had that feeling like when I had two horses in a race. But I actually wanted Abarrio at that point to keep going. But Skippy got his day, and Abarrio ran just as big.
So, Saffie, you've mentioned all the problems you had going back to the Breeders' Cup, and I'm sure Randy was hearing the same things. The clockers were saying they didn't like the way the horse was training. Randy had heard rumors that perhaps he would be scratched again. So we talked about what had gone wrong. We talked about what you were worried about. What went right? What turned the corner for this horse? What did you do as a trainer to get him to perform to pretty much the best of his abilities?
I don't take any credit for it. I think the horse. I think Ian McKinley, he deserves all the credit. As I said, we were good after the British Cup Mile. We were good. We were good up to Thanksgiving. We worked him off the vet list, and then after that, we obviously he got cleared for the vet list. After that, we went trying to change something to try to get be more than good, and that's the worst thing you could do as a trainer because we were troubling things that didn't need to be troubled. And we created a big problem after that, and that's why we ran out of time not to run in a Mr. Prospector. When we entered the Mr. Prospector, we knew we were behind schedule, but we wanted to have the option open because we really wanted to give him a prep to have him fitness-wise there. But just, I think Ian McKinley deserves a lot of credit for it. His exercise rider, Vicente Gudiel, that gets on him every day. I mean, I think that his feedback was important because he was telling me towards the end, he was like, we're just as good as last year. We're just as good as last year. And as a trainer, you always feel like you could do more. I wasn't getting that feeling. But he was obviously right. He was right because he's on the horse every day and he knows what he's feeling. And so I think all those guys deserve all the credit. I mean, for me, I can't take any credit because I was looking at it. I wasn't looking at it with a clear mind. I was overthinking it, and when you overthink things, training horses, that's not the way you're supposed to train a horse. So I'm just grateful that everything went to plan, and the horse showed up and ran good.
Well, you won't take credit, but we'll be glad to give you some credit for running 1-2 in the Pegasus World Cup. And not only that, you did it with two 7-year-olds who are still running at a very high level. In the case of Skippylongstocking, running as well or better than he's ever run before. So he had run in, I think, 11, maybe this was the 11th, but previous grade 1 stakes races without a grade 1 win. I know you guys really wanted it for him. How significant is it for him and his future, let's say at stud?
Yeah, I mean, the exaggerator hurts him. Being by exaggerator as a stallion, that definitely hurts him. But his mare has become a really good producer. She's had all basically stakes or greatest stakes winners. So he has a lot of help on the female side. Getting to grade one, I think, helps him. Now he'll, especially winning a grade one like the Pegasus, I think it will get him some kind of stallion thing down the line, whether it be in a smaller state. But it definitely adds to his resume of he was precocious enough to run 5 times as a 2-year-old. He broke his maiden as a 2-year-old, and then he's able to get good and stay good for such a long time, and that's unique. I mean, it shows his mentality and his ability to stay strong, and those are attributes that you want in the breed going forward.
Now, he would have had an August to January layoff, but you managed to get a race into him in the Harlan's Holiday. And you said going into that race and after the race that he was not 100% fit, that you were going to use that race as a stepping stone to get him ready for the Pegasus. And that worked out perfectly, right?
Yeah, he had everything went right for him. So going into the Harlan's Holiday, he was kind of like Abarrio going into the Pegasus. You were getting there, but you're coming off a very well. Abarrio wasn't coming off a bad run, but he was coming off a bad run at Charlestown that you needed to see him run well before you could have confidence. When he won the Harlan's Holiday, we felt good and we felt like he should move forward quite a bit. On his Ragnarsson number actually in the Harlan's Holiday came back pretty fast for an inside trip. I think he ran a 4 in the Harlan's Holiday, which is very fast for an inside trip. And he did amazing from there. He gave us all the confidence into the Pegasus that he was going to run one of his best races, but you never know until they do it. But he definitely did run his best race, in my opinion, in his life. I think taking him back has made a big difference, riding him more patiently, and Tyler gave him a great ride.
Now, Saffie, have you decided yet what you're going to do with these two? Have you planned out any plans going forward for them?
Nothing's really set in stone. As there's a possibility one of them could go to Dubai. I think they'll probably talk it over the ownership group more this week, and then one of them will go to the Oakland Handicap. So
okay,
I think those would probably be the 2 races. Like if White Abarrio most likely probably will go to something like the Oakland Handicap, and Skippy could go to Dubai.
And if you decided to go to the Oakland Handicap with Skippy, he's won that before. He won it 2 years ago in 2024 in one of the best races of his life to that date. So yeah,
that day was like a grade one. Like he had run fast enough in some races that he you would think he could win a grade one. And that Oakland Handicap was one of the days that I think if he was running again, there was grade one horses in there. Obviously, First Mission came back and win a grade one, I think, or Highland Falls, one of them. So he was definitely capable on the day, and Pegasus Day this year proved to be it.
And Saffie, we've asked you about the future of Skippylongstocking so far as a stud career, but to me, White Abarrio falls into somewhat of the same group. He's had a better career than Skippylongstocking, but he too is not by a fashionable sire. You mentioned Exaggerator with Skippylongstocking, Race Day with White Abarrio. If he were by Into Mischief, he would have been, or Gunrunner, he'd been retired a long time ago. Do you and the ownership field many phone calls from farms that are looking for him? And have you decided this is going to be his last year? What do you think his future as a sire might be?
Yeah, I think with both of them, this is most likely going to be their last year. It'll be very unlikely to run at 8. I mean, hopefully they can stay sound and run unhealthy and run through their 7-year-old year. And I think it would be a good for them to go off next year to be stud. Abarrio, he's got offers, but nothing that the owners thought like that they thought basically how you explained it, that it was good enough for him. I mean, to put him in a spot to succeed. So. He definitely has a great resume. He's won the Breeders' Cup Classic, the Whitney, the Pegasus, the Florida Derby. So to have a horse with that resume, it's there are not many that have that kind of resume, and hopefully he does get his chance. I think this race, running second in the Pegasus, doing what he did, should even substantiate that even more.
We like to go deep and get into the real nuts and bolts and the real nitty gritty. So we don't ask this question very often. Around the barn, from a personality standpoint, what are these two horses like, White Abarrio and Skippylongstocking?
So White Abarrio, he has a different since we put the goat with him, his personality is much more likable. Sometimes before he had the goat, he could be almost like you would almost say he want to be cocky or a jerk in certain aspects, but he's very, very smart mentally, the horse. Like, he's so smart. That's probably why he gets that little arrogant way sometimes. I mean, but he's very smart mentally, and he understands. I mean, it's hard to describe him, but his intelligence is really smart, and the signs he shows that when he's happy, he'll show you signs that the way he carries his head and bows his head. He does show you the signs. So he's very smart and intelligent, and he observes everything. Skippy, he's more relaxed. He's more easier. On race day, Skippy pumps himself up. In the paddock, he'll get very, very strong on you. Like, he'll really get aggressive in the paddock. Around the barn, he's kind of cool, relaxed. In the stall, he'll nip on you a bit. He'll bite more than a Barrio, but he's different in that aspect. So two different horses, two different personalities, just like people. Two horses that have defined my career, I could say, without a doubt.
Randy, if you don't have any more White Abarrio questions, I want to segue, and you'll appreciate this because you'll be covering the Holy Bull Stakes for NBC on Saturday. So, Saffie, tell us about Bravaro, the New York bred that you're running in there. Horse has obviously shown some talent, but albeit just against New York breds. What are your expectations level for him in the Holy Bull?
Yeah, the horse. I think is a very talented horse. 2 turns, they have to do it before you could really feel confident. Training wise, he's had a great preparation. 3 back, he worked with Skippy. 2 weeks ago, he worked with Solitude Dude, who's a good horse that's running in the swale. And feel like if he handles the distance, he's going to go very close. He's a big, strong, good-looking horse, and he was very professional in both of his races.
And you also have Tessellate in the forward gal. Give us your take on her chances.
Yeah, we entered her, kind of weren't sure if we were going to run her. She worked yesterday, and I thought she worked well enough to justify running there, so she's going to go with a good shot. She's been a much better horse in the last 2 races because we've taken her back and ridden her more patiently. I think that's helped. This is a tougher race. There's a couple in there. Mythical is very good, especially at that distance. And then Brad's has a filly in there that's nice too. So she's going to need to improve from a figure standpoint to be competitive, but she could.
We'll be showing that race on NBC. You'll have the Pennsylvania bred Sea Cane in there as well. Day to day. Running in the turf race also that we'll have. So yeah, we'll have you again. Maybe we're your good luck charm.
Hope so.
Saffie, before I let you go, I want to ask one more question. I am a huge fan of Barbados. If anybody's never been on vacation there, it's a wonderful place. Garrison Savannah is one of the best kept secrets in all of horse racing. What kind of reception have you got in Barbados from the media, just from your friends back in the racing industry there? They must be just overwhelmed with the success you've had in the United States. What do you hear back from home?
Yeah, I think it is very gratifying. The reception we got from home is early on in our career. Obviously, we weren't getting to a high level, and some people were actually saying you're going to come back home soon. So, but as we've kind of broke through to the top, among the top, we've got a lot of reception where a lot of people have jumped aboard and been supportive, and we've also tried to reciprocate and help people from Barbados to come up here for jobs. We've got some of them to Ocala on the visas, and we've got some up here. So it is very big, and Barbados does produce very good horsemen from the grooms to the riders, to the exercise riders, and the trainers. So it's been gratifying to see the reception and the following, that how like when we win, it feels like the whole of Barbados wins, and that is special because that is home.
Way back in the day, Saffie, I covered the Sandy Lane Gold Cup for ESPN. The year that Bill Marshall and John O. Jones won it with a horse named Blast of Storm, who I think went back to back, actually. Between the Garrison Savannah, that historic track, and the beaches, that was a trip to remember.
Yeah, I think you covered it one year. My brother won too. Were you there when Peace and Voy won? I think you were there. Yeah. My brother won that horse. Yeah, you were there that year. Yeah, ESPN. That was a big thing when ESPN was coming to cover racing in Barbados. Like it was like the pinnacle to have ESPN there.
Very good. Well, Saffie, again, congratulations on just a wonderful training achievement, finishing 1-2 in the Pegasus World Cup. And, these old 7-year-old warriors become fan favorites. So we're looking forward to what you have in store for them for the rest of 2026. And thanks again for being our Gainesway Guest of the Week. And job well done at Gulfstream last Saturday.
Thank you very much for having me on.
And Guest of the Week, Saffie Joseph, was brought to you by Gainesway, home of the Lightning Fast. Grade 1 sprinter Drain the Clock, the first horse to defeat champion sprinter Jackie's Warrior around one turn. That was in Belmont Park's Woody Stevens Stakes. Drain the Clock also won the Bay Shore and the Swale. He fits the mold of what breeders are looking for. He is imposing physically, and he also, of course, had a tremendous amount of early speed. And Drain the Clock stands at Gainesway now for a fee of $10,000.
Drain the Clock will win and win by as much as he wants.
Drain the Clock will bound home the winner. Drain the Clock, Jackie's Warrior, Drain the Clock by a head.
$270,000
in the back. $250,000.
The Pennsylvania breeding program is the best program in the country. The Stallion Awards, the owner bonuses, also the restricted races and the stakes races for Pennsylvania breds. This year, 8 breeders are on track to earn over $200,000 in breeders' awards, and 2 could hit the $1 million mark. We have the best program in the country. Take advantage of the fantastic program that we have.
Learn more at pabred.com.
The TDN Writers Room also brought to you by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association, the PHBA, this coming week on the Holy Bull undercard at Gulfstream Park. A Pennsylvania bred is front and center in the Grade 3 Forward Gal Stakes for 3-year-old fillies at 7 furlongs. Her name is Seacane. She is named after a town in Pennsylvania. Coincidentally, she's a daughter of Audible out of a former Godolphin mare who finished 3rd in the Cash Run Stakes in her last start. Before that, 3rd in the Tempted Stakes at Aqueduct. She is owned by Jim Thompson's Final Furlong Farm and also Saul Cuman's Mataquette Stable. And Seacane is in with a pretty good shot to become a graded stakes winner. That is on Saturday's card at Gulfstream Park. If you want more information on the Pennsylvania breeding program, you can call Brian Sanfratello. That number is 610-444-1050.
Welcome back, and good to hear from Saffie Joseph. Randy, I know you came up with some interesting factoids about this year's Pegasus World Cup. Let's hear them.
Yeah, I wish we had the statistics, and maybe they're out there, and they haven't. I asked for them, but I'm not even sure that horse racing databases exist to this much detail. But when's the last time you can remember a Grade 1 stakes race, especially on dirt like the Pegasus, in which the 1, 2, 3 finishers were all 7-year-olds? And not just 7-year-olds, but 7-year-old entire horses, and not 7-year-old geldings. That's right. Skippylongstocking, White Abarrio, and Full Serrano. All 3 are 7-year-olds. And what's more, and this is another kind of interesting thing, the breeders in America aren't necessarily celebrating this Pegasus World Cup trifecta. White Abarrio, well, let's start with Skippylongstocking, first of all. By Exaggerator, who right now has a stud fee of $5,000. White Abarrio is by Race Day, who right now has a stud fee of $5,000. And Full Serrano is by a horse called Full Mast, son of Mizzen Mast, who stands in Argentina. The stud fee is listed as private, but my guess would be you could probably breed to Full Mast for $5,000.
There you go. So sometimes it's not all Into Mischief, Gun Runner, and the rest of those illustrious sires. So it's nice to see kind of these blue collar horses do so well. So in the Pegasus World Cup Turf, the story was Graham Motion. And in both the big races, trainers took home 1-2, as Saffie Joseph did in the Pegasus World Cup Invitational. Test Store gets the win over One Stripe in that race. A tremendous performance for the Graham Motion stable. Shout out to both horses. Test Score making his first ever start against older horses, wins by a neck. But Randy, I got to think that maybe One Stripe going forward is going to have the better campaign of the two. And I base that on the trip that he had. He only got beat a neck, and I don't think it was the fault of the South African jockey Gavin Lorena. It's just the way the race developed. But he had to go 8 wide, and I think if he was able to save some ground, he's probably the winner and not Test Score. And I think both you and Zoe last week on the show were really high on this horse, picking out the fact that he looked really good in a Gulfstream allowance beforehand. And I think Graham Motion's got 2 very good turf horses in there. But even though he ran second, I was a little bit more impressed with One Stripe.
Yeah, as you're talking, I meant to look this up, and I'm on my computer right now. You can actually go to Equibase, and you can go into the GPS charts, and they've sort of upgraded the accuracy of these, and you can get overall distance traveled for all of these races, right? And so in the Pegasus World Cup Turf, as I click on one more thing here, okay, they have the cumulative distance traveled of Test Score at 59.54 and One Stripe at 59.67. Not as much as I would have thought. Maybe about a 1 length difference in distance traveled between the two horses, and But both horses ran exceptionally well, and it's a nice situation for Graham Motion, who obviously, as we know, is not only one of the classiest guys out there among trainers, but also one of the very, very best trainers in the entire sport. And to have 2 horses like this who were just clicking on all cylinders. Test Score, the only question about him that I had was running against older horses for the first time. All of his races had been, last year restricted to 3-year-olds, and he ran well. He was remarkably consistent, but the numbers weren't nearly as good as horses like Program Trading, for example, or even One Stripe in his most recent allowance win at Gulfstream. So, how would Test Score, how much would he step up in that kind of situation? But once again, as he's shown throughout his career, Test Score is a very determined horse. He's a very game horse. And in this case, he was up to the challenge. He improved his number tremendously. And Test Score and One Stripe are going to be 2 really fun horses to watch the rest of the year.
You mentioned Program Trading, who was the heavy favorite 13-10. Boy, he had no excuse whatsoever. No. I mean, Flavien Prat rode a great race, saved all the ground. The hole opened up for him on the rail, and he just had no punch in the final 16th of a mile. He was the big disappointment in the race.
Yeah, it's cool to see, back to One Stripe here real quick. It's cool to see. I mean, we talk about all the time about how horse racing has become such an international sport, but to get from South Africa to the United States to run in our big races, these horses have to jump through so many hoops. It's a little better than it used to be, but this horse had to spend a couple of months in France, ironically, to get from South Africa to the United States. And then things kind of went haywire because there was no real prep race to run him in. So Graham Motion had to run him against Notable Speech in the Woodbine Mile to get a race in before the Breeders' Cup. And then he ran him in the Breeders' Cup. And Juan Hernandez sent him to the lead. Motion was aghast as the race was going on that One Stripe was out dueling for the early lead, which is not the way he wants to run. And lo and behold, they bring in Gavin Lorena, his regular jockey from South Africa, to ride him in the Pegasus, and took him back, let him settle back as the horse prefers to run. And he ran a heck of a race. But the co-owner of this horse, there's Hollywood Racing, which is owned by Hollywood Bets, which is one of the largest betting conglomerates in South Africa. It's huge in South Africa, and they're big in the sport of horse racing. And the other owner is an attorney by the name of Rikesh Sugulam, who has owned this horse from day one. He was the only owner to begin with, has never seen the horse run in person. He prefers to sit at home and avoid all the pressure and watch on television. So hopefully Rikesh was watching on TV on Saturday when One Stripe finished second at Gulfstream.
Well, the other big story out of Gulfstream, I think, was the big day that Bill Mott and Junior Alvarado had. They went through, teamed up for 3 wins. And Randy, the one I wanted to focus in on, we already mentioned that Knightsbridge was the fastest horse of the week, but figure, not just because of the figure. I thought that he was one that it's going to come out of this day, and again, somebody that we're really going to perhaps look forward to have a very strong campaign. Not only do you win by 4 3/4 lengths, this Life and Times horse that had run twice for Todd Pletcher and looked so tremendous in his first, granted only 2 starts, but he beat him very easily. That horse finished third, beaten 7 3/4 lengths. So Knightbridge is now won at a mile. I mean, you would logically think the Mott Camp will look ahead to the Met Mile, but would imagine might be a race or two in between there. So Mr. Mott, who won the Eclipse Award as Outstanding Trainer in 2025, got off to a good start in 2026, and it looks like he's got a very nice horse in his barn called Knightsbridge.
Yeah. Oh, man, was he impressive. I mean, I don't know what his ultimate distance limitations are going to be. There's probably a reason, why his races have pretty much all been around. Maybe all of them have been around one turn so far. But this was a lights out performance. Those who follow handicapping closely, especially Gulfstream Park, are aware of the unusual circumstances in 1 mile races on dirt at Gulfstream, the 1-turn mile. The starting gate is way back in the back of the chute. There's absolutely no run up whatsoever. The timing essentially begins when the gate opens. So the fractional times for those 1 mile races are all significantly slower than the other dirt races. And yet Knightsbridge was dueling for the lead with Life and Times in 45.25 for the half and 109.33 for 6 furlongs. That totally did Life and Times in. I mean, he had been 2 for 2 lifetime going in and had been very visually impressive in those races. And Knightsbridge not only dueled that horse into submission through a suicidal pace, then he pulls away to win by 4 3/4, just under very little urging from Junior Alvarado. So this horse, the sky's the limit for this horse. Mott has pointed out that he's always thought the horse obviously had a tremendous amount of ability, but in his words, the horse has never really been able to get into a rhythm during his career because little things would pop up that would interrupt his training schedule and force him to take little layoffs. And now he's had, 3 races, boom, 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 with no interruptions, stay on schedule, get into a rhythm. And now we're seeing exactly how good Knightsbridge can be, which is really good.
Yes, something to look forward to in 2026, a very fast horse in the Bill Mott stable.
To no one's surprise, last week was an embarrassment of riches for Kentucky breds. First of all, they were a dominant force again in Eclipse Award balloting. As a matter of fact, Sovereignty became the 4th consecutive Horse of the Year bred in Kentucky, following Torpedo Anna, Cody's Wish, and Flightline. And also on the racetrack last week, Kentucky breds starred both domestically and internationally. Of course, as we talked about, Skippylongstocking won the Pegasus World Cup. Test Score won the Pegasus World Cup Turf. Meanwhile, over in Dubai, 3 Group 3 stakes races won by 6 Speed, bred by Katie Rich Farms, Mendelssohn Bay, bred by Kuyathi LLC, and Drew's Gold, bred by Woodford Thoroughbreds.
With some of the fullest fields in the country and quality racing year-round, there's never been a better time to reap the rewards of breeding and racing in Kentucky. Purse money in Kentucky is at an all-time high, as is average purse per race, outpacing California, Florida, and New York. Kentucky breds. Breed them, raise them, race them. We all win.
Be a smarter better with First TV, the best horses. With thousands of exclusive morning workouts. All at your fingertips and delivered right into your inbox. Everything you need to be informed. Be smart. Bet smart. With First TV.
The Work of the Week is brought to you by First TV. That's Nevada Beach on the outside and Nisos, the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile winner on the rail, working 7 furlongs in company on Saturday for their date in the February 14th Saudi Cup. Pair was last seen finishing 1-2 with Nisos on top in the December 28th Lafitte Pink Eye Junior Stakes. Niso again bested his stablemate here, completing the 7 furlong work in 125 to Nevada Beach's 125.60. Well, Randy, you're heading back to Gulfstream this weekend, I hear, for the Holy Bull and the Forward Gal. And so I'll start with you. Holy Bull is a good race. It really is the first major race on the road to the Florida Derby / Kentucky Derby down in Florida. Some fast horses in there, some horses that have more to prove, of course. But let's get your take. Who are you have your eye on in this race?
Yeah, well, 9 horses were entered. And first of all, let me start with a couple that are not going to run. One is definitely not going to run, and another probably won't run. Butane from the Bob Baffert barn, more about him in a minute, but he will not be running in the Holy Bull, and we'll tell you why. And then Game For It, the horse who was an impressive maiden winner at Aqueduct for trainer Chad Summers and owner Al Gold, will also apparently is doubtful to run. So that leaves a field of 7. And really, I thought that it came down to 2 horses, maybe 3. And I'm talking about Nearly, a horse trained by Todd Pletcher, who has had 2 tremendously impressive races back to back. I think we talked about him on an earlier podcast. He won a maiden race by 9, and then he came back and won an allowance race, despite trouble leaving the starting gate by a widening margin of 5 lengths. And then you've got a horse trained by Brad Cox named Cannoneer, who was a very impressive maiden winner at Churchill Downs right after Thanksgiving. He won that race by 7.5 lengths. And Cannoneer happens to be a half brother to Gervin, who, of course, won the Haskell back in the day, to Midnight Bourbon, who won $3.6 million in his career, and then another horse called Pirate's Punch, and even Cocked and Loaded, a couple of other stakes winners. So this horse has a great pedigree, Cannoneer. And this isn't, they both win in big numbers, This is a nice showdown between a couple of horses that really have potentially promising futures. The third would be Global Aviator from the Rohan Crichton barn, who overcame a pretty significantly poor start in his maiden win at Gulfstream Park, and still managed to get up and win with an 85 Beyer speed figure that maybe could have been even a little more than that. So, yeah, I think it comes down to those 3, but really, I think Nearly and Cannoneer deserve top billing.
Randy, you didn't even mention the horse that I'm picking. Incredible.
No?
Yeah, and the reasons why, and look, everything you said about your horses, I totally agree with, and they have been nothing less than spectacular, particularly Cannoneer and Nearly, but I'm going kind of back to handicapping 101. Incredible is the only stakes winner in the field, having won the Street Sense, and the only horse that's won around 2 turns as well for Riley Mott. Maybe his speed figures aren't quite as up to what the other 2, particularly Cannoneer and Nearly, have run, but he's no slouch either. Got to put on the glasses to see this. He ran an 82 last time out. He looks like he's improving. This is Riley Mott, not Bill Mott, but he's certainly learned well from his father. And I imagine, like his father, he brings his horses along slowly, and they will improve with time to come. So, any reason not to like this horse?
Look, he's got a solid pedigree. He's by Bolt Doro. He's got the look of a 2-turn horse, and he won around 2 turns in the Street Sense. He overcame a wide trip and a fairly slow pace from back off the pace from last, actually, to win the Street Sense. He was 3 wide on both turns. So that 82 Beyer speed figure, you could probably bump it up realistically to like maybe an 86 or an 87 just based on ground loss alone, because now he has the rail, and he'll probably, save ground in this spot. Here's the reason I didn't like him. First of all, the numbers, the speed figures. I'm a numbers guy. And they certainly weren't as good as either Nearly or Cannoneer. And also the horse that he beat in the Street Sense, a horse called Universe from the Kenny McPeak stable, who I was pretty high on coming out of this race, came back and ran again, I believe at Oaklawn, maybe the Fairgrounds, I don't recall now, but ran very poorly. Didn't run well at all against better competition. So that kind of soured me a little bit on the Street Sense as a whole. So that's why I didn't include Incredible, but I wouldn't be shocked. And as you no doubt know by now, one of our sponsors is West Point Thoroughbreds, and some congratulations are in order as West Point is celebrating an Eclipse Award with its champion 2-year-old filly Super Coradora, who, of course, scored that front-running win in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Meanwhile, a shout-out to the people behind Super Corredora, who were so critical to her success. First of all, trainer John Sadler. Then you've got jockey Hector Barrios, bloodstock agent David Ingordo, who identified Super Corredora back at Keeneland September as a yearling. And last but not least, Dr. Barry Eiseman, who broke Super Corredora and prepared her for the racetrack. Congratulations to West Point Thoroughbreds and Partners.
All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
Well, that's a wrap on this week's edition of the Thoroughbred Daily News Writers Room podcast presented by Keeneland. I want to thank our Gainesway guest of the week, Saffie Joseph. I want to thank my partner, Randy Moss, Zoe Cadman. No, not Zoe Moss, Zoe Cadman. We'll be back next. Did I break us? Zoe and Randy got married? Oh my God. That's no. So that is not the case, but she will be back next week. And also want to thank, of course, the people that work behind the scenes. They do such an excellent job. That's Sue Finley, Katie Petruniak, Anthony LaRocca, and Aaliyah LaRocca. We'll talk to you next week.